Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig Sports. This is the live stream for the Thursday night football game, the single game showdown slate for DraftKings between the Indianapolis Colts and the Denver Broncos. So, before we get started here, I did see that Nate put in a comment and said, gang. I know he's on another stream at this point in time. And hopefully next week he will be joining us for this stream, talking a little bit of single game DFS slate. But in terms of what we're going to do in this slate, we're going to go over some of the inactives for tonight's game. Couple big ones there, but pretty much everything that we knew ahead of time is still in play. And then we'll go over to DraftKings and kind of look through some of the pricing, the players, and build a couple lineups overall. So the inactives that there are tonight: Jonathan Cooper, edge rusher for Denver, doesn't really make too big a difference. Reserve safety PJ Locke doesn't make too big a difference. Quinn Miners, who's been banged up and hasn't been starting anyways. Latavius Murray was kind of one of the big ones because there was a chance that he might play in this game since they just signed him from the Saints. Didn't look too bad for the Saints, but was coming back from the game over in London and didn't really have enough time to learn the playbook. So you're looking at Mike Boone and Melvin Gordon mainly tonight. They did elevate Divino Zigbo, so I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a little bit of playing time as well since he's been around with the team. But not anybody that you want to really play in your lineups besides like a dart throw type of situation. Aaron Patrick, another reserve edge rusher. Darius Phillips, a reserve corner. And then Jalen Virgle, who's a wide receiver who has not been active all season. The big news for Denver is they did not actually sign Kendall Hinton to the active roster as far as I know. I will double check that in a minute here just to confirm because he was actually playing a lot for them. But it looks like Tyree Cleveland is going to be active. KJ Hamler might play a little bit more as well. So those are guys that you probably want to have a little bit of exposure to tonight. I'm just double checking that Hinton was not, because all the news that I've seen, I did not see anything of him being signed to the active roster. So I don't see anything of him being elevated or signed since he's already been elevated the maximum 3 times so far this season. And then we're going over the Colts side. So the two big ones for the Colts, at least, Jonathan Taylor, the running back for them, he's out with an ankle injury. So we're going to see some Nyheim Hines tonight. We're going to see some Phillip Lindsey. We might see some Deon Jackson as well. And then Shaq Leonard, their main linebacker, came back from his back surgery. First came back last week, ended up with a concussion. So that was kind of unfortunate there. Julian Blackman could be another one too, one of their starting safeties. Rodney Thomas has been kind of playing for him the last 2 games. He's the 7th round rookie out of Yale. So there could be some deep shots to take if Russell Wilson's shoulder's feeling all right. That's kind of the big question there too. Sam Ellinger, Wesley French, and Luke Tanada, not really major deals there. Tyquan Lewis, the defensive end, he's a key defensive lineman for them as well. So maybe Denver is able to run the ball a little bit better. I will say on the Broncos side too, a name that we don't see here is right tackle Billy Turner. So maybe he'll make his season debut tonight, and maybe that could help them overall in some of that run game as well. I'm not sure if they've said anything about him starting. I'm going to double check that real quick just because that could be a little bit of a factor. He is a slight upgrade over what they have. See if there's any more news on Billy Turner just real quick. Just says that he's active. Doesn't say whether or not he's actually starting. So that's kind of another question, but not one that impacts DFS in a significant way that we should be super, super concerned about at this point in time. But we're going to get over to DraftKings. So let me pull this up real quick. We'll get rid of the inactives and then we'll bring up the DraftKings. Okay. So this is just a basic contest that I have pulled up on the screen right now. So obviously the highest priced player on this slate is going to be Michael Pittman Jr. These wide receivers versus cornerback matchups are going to be very, very interesting tonight overall because we have Michael Pittman Jr. versus Patrick Surtain II. That one's going to be a pretty contested battle. And then on the opposite side, we have Cortland Sutton going against Stephon Gilmore, who's obviously a pretty good corner as well. And then we have Jerry Jeudy, mainly going to be in the slot, on the 3 wide receiver sets and stuff like that. And he's going to see a lot of Kenny Moore tonight. So going to be some difficult matchups there. Going to be interesting ones to watch. And I think this slate's a very interesting slate because we do have a lot of cheap price players down towards the bottom. So it's a slate where you do not need to be afraid to leave salary on the table. And after we get through some of the pricing, I'll talk about some of the projected ownerships and where there could be some potential advantages in like GPP type of settings. So Michael Pittman's there. Then we have Russell Wilson at let me just go back here because I'm on captain pricing instead of the flex pricing. If you've seen my videos or my streams before, I like to look at the flex pricing because you're only playing one captain and we can figure it out from there. Russell Wilson's $10,400. Obviously, if he didn't have that big game last week, he'd probably be a little bit cheaper, but still definitely in play. He's still going to be extremely, extremely popular. His captain projected ownership is like 23%, I think it was. So that's a high one there. Matt Ryan, who's really struggled this year, is at $9,600. Cortland Sutton at $9,400. He's a guy that I do like because he's got the big target share, but you do to see the Stephon Gilmore role against him today. Melvin Gordon at $8,800. Probably going to be the lead back, was dealing with a little bit of neck injury as well. So we'll see if that affects him in any way today. Jerry Jeudy at $7,800. Definitely could be in play. I am not the biggest Jerry Jeudy fan in general, but I think there's merit to having him in some of your lineups tonight. Nyheim Hines is a guy that's going to be extremely popular tonight because there's no Jonathan Taylor. Obviously, the pass catching back. He's going to split, as I already mentioned, with Phillip Lindsey and Deon Jackson probably. But we expect Lindsey to get most of the early down work. Hines kind of still getting that third down work and kind of mix and match in there as well. Mike Boone's a popular name for fantasy football waivers this week. In terms of DFS, $6,200, like he could pay off. You could see a little bit of him and Melvin Gordon splitting. He did play a decent amount after Javonte Williams left the last game. And he's been decent in the past. He's not like a great player like some people try to put him out to be, but could have some upside tonight overall. Then we scroll down to Alec Pierce. I know a lot of people are really hyping up right now, but at $5,400, I'm not there with that price tag. I think you can take some shots on him, but I don't think it's somebody that needs to be a core play tonight. Latavius Murray was out. We already talked about Mo Cox at $4,800. He's an interesting one. Probably needs to score a touchdown to really pay off for you. These tight ends in general for this game are going to be kind of hit or miss because both teams, have kind of multiple viable tight ends or could end up being viable tight ends. Mo Cox there. We saw Jelani Woods score 2 touchdowns either last week or the week before that. We've seen Kylan Granson have a couple catches here and there pretty much every game. So there is some receiving options out there at the tight end position for the Colts. Ashton Doolin at $4,600 is just way too steep for me. He had the one good game when everybody else was kind of out, so I'm not too worried about him tonight. KJ Hamler, I played him a couple of times in these Broncos DFS single game slates. This is the highest price he's been so far just because he had the one long catch last week. But if Kendall Hinton's not out there and if he gets the reps like he should, he could definitely be a value at $4,400. So definitely somebody to look at there, whether you're playing a Russell Wilson MVP or a Russell Wilson captain line, and you want to put him along with to gain some leverage there. That's something you could do. Broncos defense very much in play the way the Colts have been playing. There's no Jonathan Taylor. Matt Ryan's been struggling. That offensive line's been struggling a little bit. Both kickers are very much in play at $4,000 and $3,800 respectively. Paris Campbell is somebody that I do like quite a bit tonight. I'll probably like him a little bit more than some other people, $3,600. Not expected to be super, super popular or anything else like that, but he is the second wide receiver in 2 wide receiver sets. He plays the slot when there's 3 wide receivers on the field. So there's some opportunities going against K'Wan Williams tonight. And then the Colts defense, if you want to be a little bit contrarian on your GPP, maybe you play the Colts defense there at $3,400. Not a bad deal there. If Hackett kind of doesn't play call rarely well once again, if they struggle to run the ball, there is some opportunities there as well. Kylan Granson, we already talked about at $3,200. Albert O is a big one here at $2,800. Obviously, he was expected to be kind of that main starting tight end and have this kind of big breakout year for the Broncos. Last game, he played 1 snap. So we know he's a red zone threat. We know he's super athletic. If he gets opportunities, he could pay off. But at the same time, he could go out there and run 4 routes and do nothing for you at the same time, or play 1 play again like last week. He's definitely a GPP guy. If you're playing cash, don't worry about him at all. Jelani Woods, a little bit the same way. He just had those 2 touchdowns the one game. You really need a touchdown out of him to pay off. Deon Jackson, Phillip Lindsey. This is where we kind of get interesting. Deon Jackson is $1,600. Phillip Lindsey's $400. I'm going to tell you right now, Phillip Lindsey is going to be way more popular because people know who he is and because he's $1,200 cheaper. So there's a couple different factors there. Deon Jackson was a guy I did like coming out, but he was an undrafted free agent. He's really only played special teams. How involved is he going to be tonight? That's kind of the big question. When I was doing my projections, I kind of, split up part of the carries to Hines, a good bulk load of the carries to Phillip Lindsey, and then kind of, the 20% left over to Deon Jackson. If he gets involved in this game, if he looks good, if he breaks off a big run, because this is a guy that is pretty quick, he has pretty good power, he runs through contact pretty well, at least he did in college, then he could be involved, But there's also the chance that he only plays like 5 plays too, or mainly just plays special teams again, because Phillip Lindsey is a proven NFL back. Eric Salbert, the tight end for the Broncos, was kind of their lead tight end, last week. $1,200, not bad value for him by any means. So definitely have some shots on him. I'm just going to click on Kendall Hinton here once again, just to make sure they didn't put anything else out. Just reverted back to the practice squad after last game. He is not on the active roster still once again, so he is not in play. Let's see if there's anybody else here. We have Andrew Beck, who's the fullback for the Broncos. Sometimes he gets involved in the passing game if they do that play action, get a couple dump off passes to him and everything else like that. There is chance. Montreal Washington, $200. Their punt returner maybe plays a couple snaps on offense. If you just want to get lucky in a punt return touchdown, then maybe. But I'm not really going there myself. Ozigbo's kind of the same way. Probably not going to play too many snaps overall. But if he gets in there and sneaks in a touchdown or something at $200, definitely could pay off. But, or, if Melvin Gordon's neck starts hurting again, then I don't think they're going to let Mike Boone just run it all by himself. And then Tyree Cleveland would be the last one of note here, is just because he's $200. He had been banged up. He missed last week, I believe, off the top of my head. And Kendall Hinton's not active now. So it's going to be him and KJ Hamler for that third wide receiver role. So maybe he does something tonight, maybe he doesn't, but he's $200. So definitely worth a dart throw if you really, really want to go there. So now that we kind of went through that, going to work through building some lineups. I see a couple of different people in here. If you guys have any specific questions related to tonight's slate, if you have questions about a certain player or anything else like that, feel free to leave it in the comments and we'll get that, and I'll get to it as quickly as possible. But in terms of this slate, I'm going to go over some of the captain ownerships, or these are the projected captain ownerships according to runthesims.com. Not an official sponsor of my YouTube channel or anything else like that, or the stream. Might be at some point in time, but it is a site that I like to reference quite a bit. For the for the Colts side, Matt Ryan's coming in just a little bit over 6% projected ownership. So there is some potential leverage there if he comes out and he plays all right. If he just comes out and sucks, you're probably not gaining any leverage there either way. And kind of the modest projections that I did with the simulator that they use, you can kind of input numbers and everything else like that. You were getting about 2% in leverage. So if you want to be a little bit more contrarian tonight, you're probably going to play a little bit more Colts players, because I'm going to skip forward just a little bit here. So the aggregate projected ownership in the captain spot essentially for the Colts is 33%. And for the Broncos, it's 67%. So that's telling you that most people think the Broncos are going to win this game. And the Broncos players are going to be the ones that have more impact overall. And really the only two other guys getting ownership in the captain spot for the Colts, Nyheim Hines, a little bit over 13%, and Michael Pittman Jr. over 13% as well. So if you want to get different, you could just play one of the Colts that is not one of those three between Matt Ryan, Nyheim Hines, or Michael Pittman. Or if you think there's a little bit of leverage to be gained in that spot, you could definitely do that as well. Then on the Broncos side, we got Russell Wilson projected for about 23% ownership. Melvin Gordon's at 14.4% projected ownership. Mike Boone's less than 1%. So if you are playing in GPP once again and you want to get a little bit different and gain some leverage in that captain spot, Mike Boone might be the guy to look at instead of Melvin Gordon. Cortland Sutton's all the way projected at 18.6%. I am a big Cortland Sutton fan. Could be a tough matchup for him. And when you're almost going with 19% of people, makes it a little bit more difficult in GPP type of setting, because you're going to be tying with a couple more people and you're really dependent on some of your other plays to differentiate your lineup overall. Jerry Jeudy is about 10%. It's probably about right. Maybe a little bit. I'd probably be a little bit lower than him in the captain spot. And the Broncos defense is about 1%. I don't think that's a bad play by any means. And I think you could play both defenses in the captain spot. You could even get a little bit crazy tonight and play the kickers in the captain spot if you really want to. It just kind of depends on how you think this game is going to go overall. And that's kind of the biggest thing about these single game slates, is telling the story of how you think this game is going to go. So I do see Sons of Dynasty in here. Oop, Sons of Dynasty in here saying, "What's up, Coach?" So I'm not sure which one of the guys from Sons of Dynasty it is. Would assume probably Dan, but definitely appreciate you checking out the stream and trying to get into the building of some lineups here real quick. So I did run a couple ones earlier on my own that I kind of like and I have put in, but just talking through some lineups is always a fun practice for me to do as well. So maybe we look at some of these Colts players. Maybe we want to make a super different lineup. So maybe we're playing like Paris Campbell in that in that captain spot, excuse me. So he's only $5,400 if you do it that way. And maybe we want to play Matt Ryan since we're playing the wide receiver. That's typically a good strategy to have. Now, what you can do off this, you got Paris Campbell, who's not super popular. You got Matt Ryan, who's not as popular as a second quarterback would be on most slates. So now, if you really want to, you could still play Russell Wilson and you can still play Cortland Sutton. And there's not that much ownership that you really risk in that situation. Now, if you want to get a little bit tricky, maybe this is where like you could still play Nyheim Hines. So you're still eating a little bit more ownership there. And then we're at $8,400. Maybe you get to like a Mike Boone or something here, but then you're on the 3-3 side if that's some place you want to be, or you go down to the kicker like Chase McLaughlin. You have a 4-2 stack and you're leaving $4,600 on the table. That's one way to get super, super creative in GPPs. Now I'm going to clear this out and do this. If we're playing in cash tonight, we're probably just going to play Cortland Sutton in the captain spot. We're probably going to play Russell Wilson in one of the flex spots. We're probably going to play Michael Pittman in one of the flex spots. Assume if you're playing cash tonight, you're playing Phillip Lindsey for $400 in the cash spot as well. So now kind of comes down. You're probably going to play one of the kickers or the Broncos defense. That's where I would be at. So we'll just do. Yes, with the Colts kicker there. And then you could play like Melvin Gordon. You could play Matt Ryan if you want to do it. There's a lot of different ways for that last spot. If you want to put Nyheim Hines in there as well, that's like a potential cash lineup right there. So that's kind of the basis that I would take it. Maybe you take the kicker out and you put in the Broncos defense if that's something you want to do, because even then you still have the top two wide receivers for both teams. You have the quarterback, and then maybe if you play Broncos defense, maybe you don't play Phillip Lindsey or Nyheim Hines. You switch one of those out for somebody else. Let's see. We'd have $3,900 there. We'd have this. So in theory, you could go Melvin Gordon, Broncos defense, and then like Phillip Lindsey behind it. So this could be another potential cash build too with Cortland Sutton, Russell Wilson, Michael Pittman Jr., Broncos defense, Melvin Gordon, and then Phillip Lindsey. So pretty safe plays there overall, or what we assume would be safe plays at least for this game overall. So that's two different cash lineups that you could run out there if you wanted to do so. Obviously, you could put Russell Wilson in the champion spot too as well, since he is projected at least to be the chalkiest player on tonight's slate overall. But now, if you want to get a little bit creative, like maybe we're throwing Mike Boone in the champion spot because you were in this GPP type of setting. We're playing Mike Boone. Maybe we're playing like a Cortland Sutton and Russell Wilson alongside him still. Where'd Cortland Sutton go? There he is. And we're playing the running back. So maybe we're playing the Denver Broncos defense. Excuse me, Broncos. So now you get down to this part. We already got 4 Broncos in here. You could go a 5-1 stack. You could go a 4-2 stack. You can do a lot of different things from this situation. So if we have Mike Boone up there and vice versa, if you want to put Melvin Gordon in the champion spot, you could do the same type of theory. But Melvin Gordon is going to be a little bit more popular. So now when we're talking, we could play one of the kickers. We could play McLaughlin, McManus, or we just play McManus. We got the defense. So most of the times when you play the defense, you don't want to play the opposing quarterback, but you could still play like a Michael Pittman Jr. here. This is a potential GPP build as well. We got Mike Boone up there. If we take Mike Boone out and we put Melvin Gordon in, probably have to change this around a little bit because obviously we can't afford Michael Pittman Jr. then at that point. But you could also take Brandon McManus out and then you could put somebody else in there as well. Let me go back up. So you can play some of these guys down here. They're a little bit, they have some risk to them. Let's just put it that way. So let's see. And then I know, God, I can't remember who it was, but I know one of the guys that typically turns in. He likes to see what happens if we put a really cheap player in the champion spot. So in this case, we could put Phillip Lindsey up there. We could put Phillip Lindsey. We could put Michael Pittman Jr. We could put Cortland Sutton. Melvin Gordon kind of flew in there, but I'm not mad about that. So even that, if you want to put Phillip Lindsey up here, you could put Phillip Lindsey in the champion spot. You could put Michael Pittman Jr., Cortland Sutton, Melvin Gordon, Russell Wilson, and Matt Ryan. That's a legitimate lineup as well. You still have $600 left over. It's probably not going to be duped quite as much just because most people aren't putting Phillip Lindsey in the champion spot, but that is something to take note of at least. So I'm not sure if anybody has any questions at this point in time. If you do, feel free to leave them down in the comments. I know there's a couple people that typically like to watch that prefer to play on FanDuel as well. So I'm going to go over to my sheet, which is just off to the side right now, but I'll go through some of the values over there. But in general, for the DraftKings side, in terms of the core captain plays, obviously Cortland Sutton, Melvin Gordon, and Russell Wilson and the Broncos defense, they're all going to be up there. They're all going to be super popular. So you're going to be a little bit chalky if you're playing them, but I think there is value in there as well. Whether or not you want to play them, you play Michael Pittman Jr., there's a lot of chalk at the top in terms of that. But if you want to get a little bit creative and different, this is a good slate to do that on as well. So talking some FanDuel just real quick. Russell Wilson is $16,500. He is by far the most expensive player on FanDuel by $1,500. So if you want to fade him tonight, you could definitely do it in GPP settings. If you're playing cash, you're probably not going to want to do it, but still a decent core captain pick, a core MVP pick on the FanDuel side as well. Matt Ryan at $1,500. He's pretty easy to fade as well at $1,500. Don't know if you go the full double fade with both quarterbacks. You still probably should play one of them, just kind of depending on how you're building your lineup. You don't have to play him in the MVP spot though, but you can definitely do that. Michael Pittman Jr. is $14,000. Cortland Sutton's $13,000. Big target shares going against subpar matchups for them as wide receivers. So they're going to be tough matchups, and maybe they don't pan out tonight. So maybe you want to play them in the MVP spot. Maybe you don't. Then we get down to Melvin Gordon, $12,500. They definitely priced him up quite a bit just because Javonte Williams is out. Jerry Jeudy's at $12,000. I think it's a decent price tag, but I don't think I want to get a ton of him over on FanDuel. Actually, building FanDuel tonight was really, really difficult. So I'm not playing as much over there. I prefer DraftKings for this slate specifically, and typically in general, but when it comes to football, at least. Broncos defense, $10,000, a little bit priced up. Deon Jackson over there was $9,500, so probably not anybody you're getting to on FanDuel quite as much. Then the Colts defense, $9,500. You can take some shots there. Both kickers are in play at $9,000 and $8,500 respectively. Mike Boone's in play at $9,000. Well, Cox stands out a little bit at $8,000, and then you get down to like Alec Pierce is $7,500. A little bit better price tag on the FanDuel side than he is on DraftKings, so definitely could play him there. Phillip Lindsey, $7,500, so a little bit more of a hefty price tag on FanDuel, but still very much in play. KJ Hamler, Paris Campbell, both at $7,000. Definitely good shots to take there. Then you get down to those tight ends with Kylan Grants and Jelani Woods, Andrew Beck, and Eric Salbert. So Eric Salbert, like if you're looking for somebody that's real cheap on the FanDuel side, he is $5,000. So if you're playing a cash lineup, you're probably playing him, honestly. I know Alberto is pretty cheap over there as well. That was just run down FanDuel real quick, kind of a couple little different thoughts. In terms of the core captains, they're probably the same kind of Broncos with Russell Wilson, Cortland Sutton, obviously Broncos defense and Melvin Gordon, but I think there's a lot of different ways you could build on FanDuel if you wanted to tonight as well. I know we got a couple of people in here. If you guys have any questions at all, once again, do not hesitate to ask. At this point in time, we got about 6 minutes. I like to run this about 30 minutes, but if you guys have any questions specifically in general, just let me know. I'm going to go over to run the sims. I'm going to just run a generic sim with their projections real quick, and then we'll see what some of their lineups look like and see if some of their top lineups were similar to the cash lineups that I was kind of talking about previously. So let's see. The top one popping up has Russell Wilson in the captain spot, Cortland Sutton, Broncos defense, Jerry Jeudy, Mike Boone, and Nyheim Hines. So that That makes sense. That could be a very popular cash lineup. I would not be surprised. Then there's Russell Wilson, captain spot, Cortland Sutton, Eric Salbert, Melvin Gordon, Mike Boone, and Nyheim Hines. So that one's specifically interesting because you have both Broncos running backs. I think personally, I would try to just pick one of them. Maybe you keep Mike Boone in there and you trade off Melvin Gordon for a different player, or you keep Melvin Gordon in there and then you trade off Mike Boone for maybe like a kicker or like the defense, because you could definitely do that in that lineup, play the Broncos defense instead of Mike Boone. And then like Nyheim Hines could still catch some passes and be effective in that role. And you still have a little bit of differentiation as well. Let's see here if there's any other ones that are pretty interesting. Cortland Sutton. I'm just looking at, God, I don't see any ones that are like super, super interesting to me right now. This one's weird, honestly. Jerry Jeudy in the captain spot, and then Russell Wilson in the flex spot. And then 4 Colts with Matt Ryan, Michael Pittman Jr., Nyheim Hines, and Phillip Lindsey. That would make a very interesting lineup. And let's see, the sum ownership is actually higher on that than I thought there would be. But that's an interesting one. We got Mike Boone. Let's see this Mike Boone champion one. So Mike Boone, Cortland Sutton, Broncos defense, Melvin Gordon, Nyheim Hines, Russell Wilson. That is a line that I don't mind. And that's kind of a line that I think I built similar, at least, with Mike Boone in the champion spot and then playing Melvin Gordon together. I don't think you need to do that, but in a GPP type of setting, you could definitely make that work if you wanted to. Let's see. Any other ones that I'm just looking for ones that kind of stand out at this point in time? Because essentially what Run the Sims does, it runs, I think it's 1,000 or like 150. I don't remember off the top of my head. But, and then you can kind of look at the different ones from there. Obviously, anytime you use an optimizer, you can't just go punch it in and take like the top lineup. You can try to do that for cash, but like go through, use your brain a little bit and say, does this lineup make sense? Okay, well, if I got 4 Colts and the Broncos defense, it's probably not going to do too well. Could do well, but it's very rare that situation does happen. Let's see, a couple other ones. This one's really weird. There's Mike Boone in champion spot, then Kylan Granson, Matt Ryan, Michael Pittman Jr., Nyheim Hines, and Russell Wilson. So this is the kind of one that when I'm talking about, you got to look at these ones and see if they make sense. That one doesn't make a lot of sense to me. There's probably some universe where it ends up winning, or like the one after is Nyheim Hines and then 5 Broncos behind it. So definitely be sure to play around anytime you use any type of optimizer and kind of figure out what you want to do overall. And a lot of times that what's important to do if you're using an optimizer in general, if you have one that you can set up groups, it's very important to do that, especially like say, hey, I'm going to have Russell Wilson in the MVP spot. If I have him in the MVP spot, I want to take 2 of his wide receivers with him, whether or not that's Cortland Sutton, KJ Hamler, Tyree Cleveland, one of the tight ends, or Jerry Jeudy. And then maybe you can do the same thing with Matt Ryan. If I have Matt Ryan, I'm going to have Michael Pittman plus another wide receiver. That's a good rule of thumb to have probably for tonight and for most slates overall. But don't see too many questions popping up in here. I'm going to wait around for about a minute more. If you guys have any questions about theory, you want to see a different type of lineup build or anything else like that, feel free to leave them down in the comments and I'll get back to you. Otherwise, once I'm off of here, we got about 15 minutes before game time. If you want to hit me up on Twitter, if you got another question you just missed it by the time I end the broadcast to before lock, so reach out to me at Coach Craig Sport on Twitter. You can definitely find me over there. If you're interested in any other NFL DFS stuff, definitely check out my Patreon at patreon.com/Coach Craig Sport. Small donation over there, but you get my DFS cheat sheet player pool for the week. If you have any other questions about DFS, feel free to reach out to me and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. But definitely do appreciate you guys that were in here checking out the stream tonight. I know these are still relatively new, still working on kind of the process there. And like I said, most weeks I'm going to try to have a guest when I can. I know Nate was coming in earlier here. I think he's going to come on next Thursday. Tentatively, that's kind of the plan. Got a couple other people that potentially lined up for the future as well. It's a lot more interesting when you have more than just one mind talking to at the same time and kind of breaking down the slate and kind of everything too, because everybody thinks a little bit differently, especially when it comes to these single game settings overall. But with that being said, don't really see too much popping in here. So I'm going to end the stream. Once again, if you have any questions prior to game time, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport. But I do greatly appreciate you guys checking out this stream. Either tomorrow or Saturday, my DFS core picks for the main slate will be up. So that video is just where I go through quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and defense, one of each that I do like in particular for this week overall. But with that being said, good luck to you guys tonight, and I'll catch you next time.